Hey everybody, what's up? Trey Wingo here. Welcome into another edition of the Chop Shop, and back with my good friend Mark Schlereth, who is back from Disney and the Disney Animal Kingdom Lodge. And Stink, what's the Disney Animal Kingdom Lodge's nickname?
The Dak. The Dak.
That's right, the Dak. And that is problematic and symptomatic because we are talking about the Dak in this episode of the Chop Shop. The Cowboys and Dak Prescott finally get a deal done. On one side, it's a little disappointing because it gave us 2 years of content, right? two years where we could beat that horse as hard as we wanted to, and now we got to find something else. But at the end of the day, people are always going to say who won and who lost in any of these negotiations, right? And to me, I think there's a clear winner here, but not in the way people think. I think it's Dak Prescott because Dak basically stuck to his guns and said, no, I want what I want. I'm going to get what I want. And I think I did it the right way. What are your takeaways of how this deal was put together?
Well, first and foremost, I love it when a guy gambles on himself. Yep. When a young player says, this is what my worth is, this is what the open market will allow me to get. And then he says, I'm going to hold tight. I'm going to stick to my beliefs until I get exactly what I want. And I love that aspect. I love the empowerment of the player from that standpoint, right? And so that to me makes me really excited for Dak Prescott because you have to remember, this is not the guy that was drafted in the first round, number 1 overall, and was living a charmed life. He was a 4th round pick who found his way into this position and played his ass off to get here. So I love this for Dak Prescott. And I love the fact that he got what he wanted. And, let's just be frank about this. These contracts, they're so easily manipulated. And if you play up to your potential, the way you should play, the way he's played his whole career, in 2 years, we're going to be talking about Dak Prescott's contract again and what he's going to do to give them some cap relief. So it really doesn't ever go away. But I think it's just cool that he waited for his value. He waited for what he wanted. And eventually the Cowboys had to roll over and give it to him. And that makes me excited.
Right. And there's a couple of things we should clear up there, because obviously it's been through the ringer. Well, why aren't they doing this? Why aren't they doing that? From what I've been able to hear from people that were privy to the negotiations, Dak and his agent looked at where the top dollars were 2 years ago for quarterbacks. And that was like $32 million, right? And they were like, look, if you want to give us a contract that will rectify what we believe the top dollars will be in 2 to 3 years and sign that now, happy to do that for you. But we believe that $32 million number is going to jump significantly. And oh, by the way, once the TV right deals get done, it's going to go through the roof. So we're going to wait. So you can offer us, unless you're willing to offer us something that we think would be detrimental to you because it would be a massive hit on a cap situation right now. We don't want to do that. We're just going to wait this thing out. And in reality, Stink, by taking the deal right now instead of waiting to play through this season, because apparently he was willing to go through the tag one more time, by taking this deal now, he actually helped the Cowboys in the salary cap situation because his cap numbers are very manageable. I think it's 22 right now.
Yeah.
And had he played on the franchise tag, we're talking over 37 million on a cap that has gone down to about $182 million.
Yeah, I think that's big. I think the other thing is that these cap numbers, you've got to understand that the cap has never been a hard cap. And everybody acts like it's hard cap. And the thing that drives me crazy about the way people talk about the cap and the value of the cap is they act as though, or they believe in and they bought into what the organizations tell you. Like the organizations constantly lie to their fan base. It's like, oh man, we'd love to pay you, but we just can't. Like we're pressed up against the cap. Bull-loney. You can manipulate that. You can give guys upfront money, defer money across the length. You can extend the contracts. That's such a easily manipulated number when it comes to the cap. And so when I hear analysts across the country going, well, now they're not going to be able to field the team because Dak is taking up all this cap space, that's garbage. Here's 2 things that I think about. Two things really quick. One, at what point is it Dak's responsibility to manage the Cowboys cap? They got
It
a
isn't.
they got a numbers nerd that does that, right? I mean, they pay somebody to do that. So that's one. The other thing is when people say, well, now we can't go to the playoffs. You guys ain't been worth a squirt of piss since the mid-90s anyhow. Like,
they've made some playoff games. They've made some playoff games. They've won a couple. Won a couple.
Well, all I'm saying is it's not like you guys are some juggernaut. Like, let's win a few. Let's win a few. Let's make a stretch to the NFC Championship at some point.
Yeah, listen, here's the cap argument ends with this. The Philadelphia Eagles are comfortable carrying a $34 million dead cat pit this season for Carson Wentz. And yet somehow I still think they'll have a 48-man roster on active roster on Sundays, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But to your point about how malleable and manipulative the cap is, Spot Track, which is a great Twitter account, basically put this out today. Said adjusted salary caps for each 2021 NFL team per the confirmed $182.5 million cap, but these represent each team's total cap ceilings after including rollover and adjustments for the 2020 season. So these are the actual caps for in a $182.5 million salary cap season. Arizona's cap is 192. Chicago's is 190. Cincy's is 195. Cleveland's is 212. Dallas is 210. Denver is $200 million. The Jets are $210 million. The Niners are $195 million. The Washington football team is $199 million. So even the cap as a number makes no sense in relation to how it played out and things that they're giving back and rolling over from last year. It's all funny money. It doesn't add up.
It is. It's 100% monopoly money. And if you want a guy on your team, you'll find a way to manage that guy underneath your cap. You'll find a way to create enough space if that guy is that important to you. So they use it both ways. So you know how they do it. I mean, like I always say, and I joked around all the time, like when they throw contract numbers out, all of a sudden they become public and a player is turning it down and it becomes public. It never comes from the player or the player's agent. The player's agent is going, yeah, you know what? Even though they're going to pay me $100 million, I'm turning this down. It's not enough money. They never release that. The teams release it to make the fan base turn against the player to put pressure on the player.
Correct. Absolutely right. So listen, I'm happy for Dak. I'm happy. I thought he was the most underappreciated quarterback that we've seen. And you know me, I don't do wins and losses. I look at situational play and, you know, they couldn't do anything without him. So it's not that, you know, to me, again, wins and losses don't stick to one player, but it's pretty clear the Dallas Cowboys had a much better chance of winning a hell of a lot more games in 2020 with Dak under center than anybody else they put under there.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. I want to turn the tables a little bit here. I've been thinking about this, all right?
Yeah.
And the effect of Dak's deal for the Houston Texans and Deshaun Watson. So hear me out on this. I think, believe it or not, I think this empowers the Houston Texans. And here's how. Dak Prescott comes off an injury, right? And sets the market. He's going to make $75 million in signing bonus and base salary this year, guaranteed. So
$126 million guaranteed all over the deal. Yeah.
Right. So he sets a new market in guaranteed money. And I look at it like, if you're Houston, why not call the bluff of Deshaun Watson? See if you can get him back in the fold. If not, make him sit for a year. You're going to suck regardless. You were 4-12 with him last year, right?
And JJ Watt, yeah.
Right. And now what happens? Well, let's say you suck. You get the first pick overall in the draft. There's going to be every year there's a crop of 5 new quarterbacks, right? I mean, come on.
Well, that's a whole different dynamic we're going to have on another show. Right, everyone's great every year.
Right. Joe Burrow, though, was a 7th rounder. All of a sudden was the first overall pick. There's going to be somebody that has a meteoric rise. You're going to have the number 1 overall pick. The value for Deshaun Watson isn't declining. It's an appreciating asset. He is an appreciating asset. So next year you come into the 2022 draft and if he sits out and you make him sit out, all of a sudden he's still got maybe even more value than he had before, and he's 26 years old. Like, what's the downside to Houston of doing that?
There isn't. The thing that's interesting is, like, when you go through all those machinations with what may or may not happen with Deshaun Watson, is you're right. How many players are willing to walk away from that kind of money? Like Le'Veon Bell did it with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and turned out not great for him in the way things are going. And I get it. Like, everyone wants player empowerment, and there's been a lot more player empowerment in the NFL over the last few years. There's no question about it. But at the end of the day, this one is all in the hands of the Houston Texans. They have the power and they have the leverage to do whatever they want.
Yeah, no, there's no question about it. And I like, to me, if your phones aren't truly open, like the reports are, and you're not taking calls from people, at some point as an organization, and this is just my way of thinking, this is going to be probably the most epic free agent period that we have had in this league since this thing opened up in 1993, when everybody coveted everybody else's players. And then you started to realize, at some point, our players are actually better than the other people's players. So let's re-sign our guys. And the guys that hit the free agent market, they've got some flaws about them. Maybe it's personality flaws, injury flaws, whatever the case may be, but they've got some. And what we're doing is we're paying premium dollars for average to good players. Right. And this may be different because there's going to be some bloodletting. There already has been some bloodletting, to where you may be able to hire a couple of mercenaries to help turn your team around quickly on a 1-year, 2-year deal as you continue to build your team. So this could be a situation where a lot of teams dig deep into free agency at cut rate prices for exceptional or premium players at cut rate prices, to really, instead of just plugging a few holes, to really bolstering their roster.
Yeah, and there's a couple of things here we should point out, like the Ben Roethlisberger contract. First of all, I mean, his number was $41 million. They had to do something. So there's always going to be an outlier to the salary cap issue. And Ben did the team a solid. He gave him back $5 million. I mean, his $19 million salary, really, if you think about it, not the cap hit, but the salary was still incredibly low in this day and age. And then he gave back another $5 million. So that's an outlier situation. And they pushed the inevitable financial crisis a few years down the road. But what the Dak signing also did was also maybe throw some cold water into the reality of what's going on with Russell Wilson in Seattle. Like, here are the two things that I know with great certainty. There is the toppest, highest tier of quarterback play in the NFL, like 3 or 4 guys max. Russell Wilson is one of those dudes. There's no question about it. One of the places he said he would think about going to a trade to would be Dallas. Well, obviously that's not going to happen with the signing of Dak. So Russell is that guy on every level, right? We know this. It's not a debatable thing. He's the only quarterback over the last 5 years to throw 140 touchdown passes. But the other thing that I know that I have to believe is true is that he must do something to really annoy a lot of people, because I'm old enough to remember when Richard Sherman and he were teammates and they had their issues. I'm old enough to remember that in 2019, the Seattle Seahawks were thinking about trading up to get a quarterback in the first round. Russell Wilson heard it. And remember that bizarre contract demand? I want a new contract by the start of April. There was no deadline for it. There was no cap reason for it. There was no contingent financial disaster waiting on that contract. But Russell heard about what they were thinking about and forced their hand, and he got that deal done with that cringeworthy video of he and Sierra in bed. Hey, Seattle, got a deal. Go Hawks. It was so bizarre. So the question I have is, don't you think there's got to be something about Russell that people just go, man?
Yeah, what for me, one of the things that's really interesting with him is, like, I've met with him over the last couple of years.
Yeah, talked a bunch of times.
8 times, whatever it is. And he's a hard worker. He's a great guy. There is sometimes a feeling of, when you start talking football, this politician that comes out, right?
Yeah.
When you talk other things, he's real. And then there's, but that's that way with a lot of guys. I will tell you this. If I was Pete Carroll and I was on that staff, and I heard him complaining about the number of sacks that he is and the number of hits he's taken.
I meant to bring that up. Thank you. I know his offensive lineman probably hated that.
I would be livid, because I guarantee you, I've done enough games to know that here's how it works. Every time we give up a sack as an offense, and I'm using we, not like a French waiter, we as an offense, somebody's assigned that responsibility. Somebody gave up that sack. It was somebody's fault. And I think most people would be very surprised to learn how many of those are put on the quarterback. You're supposed to get, hey, man, if we're running a curl flat combination and our first read is the curl to the flat and it's open and you don't throw it, that's on you, right? If you're waiting for something better to happen, that's on you. And I'll never forget a game. Gosh, this was several years ago here in Denver, where the Broncos and Tim Tebow were playing the Detroit Lions. And the Broncos gave up 7 sacks in that game. And the fan base was livid, talking about how crappy the offensive line was. 6 of them were credited to Tebow in that game. And then he comes out like a French waiter. Well, we've got to be better and protect. No, dumbass. You got to get rid of the football. He took a sack. This is no lie. They threw a smoke screen. So all smoke screens, a one-step drop. The wide receiver on the outside just steps back, right? Yeah. And the offensive line's responsibility is to avoid the D-line to get out and block at the second level. He goes to pump it, and he decides not to throw it. Lord only knows why he decides not to throw it, right? And nobody blocks anybody because they're not assigned to block anybody. And he gets a mouthful of Rydell, and people are screaming, he got sacked on a screen. How bad do these guys suck? And they're all waiting. The whole offensive line is waiting for Tim Tebow to go, hey, man, that's on me. I got to, right? And he's like, yeah, we got to be better. And, I mean, instantly those guys, I mean, I'm getting called from the guys that were playing on that O-line going, I cannot believe this baloney. Like, this guy sucks. They were pissed.
Let me share with you a text that I got from a starting quarterback in the NFL last season after Russell made those comments on that show about the offensive line. He said, can you ask Dwayne Brown how difficult it is to protect a quarterback that runs out of the back of the pocket on every play? Right. That comment made me so mad. So again, it's this, look, there is no denying the talent. He is as high level as you would want in the position. But there's something that just tends to rub people the wrong way. And now that Dak is signed, he's not going to Dallas. I never thought he was going anywhere anyway. I think these two need to figure it out. Hey, we may not see everything the right way, but clearly our path to success is working this thing out and making sure you stay as the quarterback of the Seahawks.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question with that. But you are right. And sometimes there's just some social awkwardness, like Mr. Unlimited, that you just look at, you're like, okay, dude, calm down a little bit, embrace your inner nerd, but you're going a little bit too far on that one.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens. So anyway, listen, there's a whole other thing I want to talk with you. We'll do it for a different episode, though, because, we talked about the weirdness of last year's draft because of the way it had to be handled. I will tell you, I believe this year's draft is going to be much more of an unknown than any other draft in the history of the NFL. That's a tease for the next episode.
Wow.
Shop with Mark Schlereth. So you sit on that one, buddy, until we talk again. All right.
Now I'm going to be sitting here thinking at night, my one mouse, the hamster, there's going to be on the wheel going, what the hell was he talking about?
Well, we'll find out next time. We'll probably let that one slip out next week. Be well, be safe, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, brother. Be good.